As someone raised by an untreated borderline mother, I can't state enough how impactful it can be. I just saw a TikTok with a girl talking about how she just had a really lovely moment between her and her mom. And then the next thought she had was all the horrible, hurtful things her mom had said to her. That to me is the nature of one of the most complex and difficult relationships to recognize, identify in real ways that are hurtful and traumatic, and to then decide what to do about it, from, attempting therapy to tea party relationships to no contact. But I do want to share with you from this list and what it does to us. Being caretakers, having abandonment fears on our own, having a lifetime risk of chronic health, mental, physical health issues, living in survival mode, spending our entire lives in hypervigilant states because we're trying to always walk on eggshells to read how to give you what you need to then give us what we need, having a very low sense of self. At the core, and this has been some of my most difficult work, is believing that deep down inside there is something fundamentally wrong with me, bad or unlovable. Why? Because she has told me that. Feeling trauma bonded to her or him or whoever they are. So like you love them so much that you're terrified to be with them, terrified to leave them. And the good parts keep you stuck and tolerating the bad parts. So there's like this real trauma glue that can feel profoundly difficult to break. Being controlling in your own life. The research shows that the kids often do this. Being a people pleaser, feeling guilt and shame, emotionally numbing, having our own serious relational issues and emotion regulation issues in relationships. So not knowing how to deal with big feelings in relationship, feeling scared or fear, afraid, or numbing or shutting people out. Having fears of never being good enough and having a very severe inner and outer critic. And at the core, living with complex trauma symptoms, from dissociation to numbing to addictions to constant toxic relationship battles with yourself and friendships even. Finding that, I've struggled with both of my parents being extremely unsafe emotionally. I didn't realize it, but as I've gotten older, along with adult trauma, how much that has impacted how I see people, and at the core, believing that people are truly safe and can be there for me. Now, I'm still working on it, and I'll always work on it. Being a parent to my own kids has been incredibly healing, but that's also one of the hardest, jobs in the world. But if you have a parent like this, it is incredibly important to get every resource and support you can to heal, especially if you're still in the relationship with them now or just walking around sort of numb from the wound. I've seen a lot of videos about a certain person on this app talking about her children not speaking to her. And I want to just share some things that parents may have done or may be doing that don't realize that are hurtful, especially as someone who talks a lot about parents who may have had untreated disorders like narcissism or borderline or extreme emotional trauma or immaturity. These are some things that parents do. A lot of it is about making mistakes and owning up to it and trying to make repairs and saying, I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to work on our relationship. No parent is perfect. But I have never met anyone who went no contact completely without good reason. That being said, there are things like parental alienation and narcissistic co-parents and step-parents that can foster, at least for a period of time, especially when kids are younger. But usually if it's a long-standing no contact, as an adult, a full-on adult makes a decision, there's usually good reasons. Here are some things that parents do. Number one, lacking empathy and the ability to attune to your child or your teenager or your adult child, making them feel seen and heard and providing empathy for who they are and the life they're living. Parents who are highly critical and controlling over the course of a child's life, even if it's for their best interest, that can create a lot of trauma and wounds down the road. Being emotionally and relationally unstable to your child, to the co-parent, in the home. Like it being an eggshell situation where you were ragey or angry or upset a lot. Making your child be your best friend, enmeshment, parentification, putting your child in adult roles, expecting them to take care of you or run the home. I'm not talking about chores, but even though you may have needed the help, you put them in the role of an adult. violating boundaries significantly, not respecting your child's developing, growing boundaries, not having your own about what you talk about, the way you show up, struggling with denying and gaslighting a child's reality, basically like never validating kind of who they are and making them feel crazy when they ask you for something to change or shift or tell you that you've hurt them. Being someone who splits between devaluing your child and idealizing them. They're the greatest child, they're the worst child. So you call names, you're excessive with your punishments or disciplines. You have extreme views that you don't allow for their own identity, their own beliefs, especially as they evolve. Prioritizing your partner or other children over, a child, not allowing for safe and equal dynamics. And at the end of the day, not growing and developing and living in your own trauma or wounds or rigidity and not owning your own behavior and being curious and open to making repairs and improving your own role in the relationship. Though it's hard to fully understand for some people, there can be a massive overlap between narcissistic and borderline type traits that are untreated in individuals. Let's go through what the differences are primarily in how they are experienced between borderline and narcissism. For borderline, we can have really a fear of abandonment. That is the core. For a narcissist, it is basically a really low sense of self. So it's about themselves, not about someone leaving them. In borderline, we can see intense, unpredictable emotions. And for narcissism, it's more shallow types of emotions, except around rage. Those with BPD tend to have a more unstable sense of self. Not everyone, it is one of the qualities they may have. And for a narcissist, they often have this superior, what feels and looks like a very defined sense of self. And the identity for a narcissism doesn't really seem to change like it does, and it can, identity in borderline. With borderline, we can see a genuine interest in them understanding and being connected to people, whereas for those who have a more narcissistic kind of reference, they're more about exploiting and manipulating, and the interest would be to really serve their own needs. Those with BPD will often build their lives around other people in that effort to avoid abandonment and have that sense of self, whereas people with narcissism tend to want you to build your life around them.